Incentives in recovery. Do they work? What kind of incentives work for early sobriety? And I'm going to walk you through some of the incentives that I create for myself at nearly 10 years sober here. Now those help me get through the day.
I'm JT. I'm in my mid-30s, have a 10-year media career, and nearly a decade of sobriety. So how did another middle-class kid turn into a blackout drunk and a heroin junkie? More importantly, how did it change, and where do we go from here? This is my story.
Okay, so really interesting article I found coming to us from Colorado. This is from NBC5 in Southern Colorado. And the headline is, Cost of membership for local gym is 48 hours of sobriety. Mission to help those struggling from addiction. I absolutely love this. This is Colorado Springs, I believe, or around that area where this gym is located. And we're starting to hear more and more of incentive programs like this to help addicts recover. We talked here a couple videos back about the state of California actually wants to pay addicts to stay sober. And some of these incentive programs have actually been in action for a long time. You know, it's pretty often and common that sober living, oftentimes it's going to be sober living for the homeless, or they require some sort of length of sobriety to come in, some sort of meeting them halfway to get that food and shelter, because as we know, especially in this day and age, there are way more homeless than there are spots for them, even with all the fantastic charity around. But incentive programs, I think, like this, look, I don't know how they're paying for it. I don't know how sustainable it is. I'm going to guess there's a benefactor or more than one involved. But I think something like this, as compared to the full-on state program from California, this is the type of thing we need more of. So I want to highlight this and I want to celebrate this, because this is, for all I can tell, this is local entities coming together and coming up with smaller, albeit, but really, I think, effective ways of helping people stay sober. And not just because they're going, hey, you got to be sober 48 hours before you're allowed to use the gym, and then when you do, it's free. But because, as you've heard me talk about on this channel so many times before, exercise, I believe, is such a huge part of staying sober. I couldn't do it without it. It's hand in hand with every other part of my recovery. And I think more people would just have successful lives overall. I think it's been shown in studies now that it helps in ways that things like antidepressants, it can be as effective as medication. It's about as pivotal to a sobriety or to a healthy brain health. You know, we think about all the benefits it brings us physically, you know? I won't lie to you, working out for me is as much aesthetic sometimes as it is mental, spiritual, and physical, because yeah, I like it when I look good. And yeah, I make goals for myself to look good because that makes me feel better. That is a little shallow, but I think you believe, after all the times I've talked about it here, that above all else, it helps me get centered spiritually. And I reiterate again, you may not be an addict, you may not have a problem, but I promise you, if you've got stuff going on in your life that's hunkering you down, that's causing you mental health problems, that you're losing sleep over, that you're agonizing over in your life, and you're not having regular exercise in your life, please start as soon as you can, where you are physically able to. And of course, as you know, it can all start just with a walking every day. But I highly recommend taking whatever step you can, the first step, but starting to create goals for yourself so you do more and more, because you will find equilibriums and you will need to build off that. We're going to talk about that here with incentives, because look, obviously, we can't build incentives for everything for people to stay sober. I think even the paying people to stay sober incentive is rather lofty. But then when you consider what kind of money they were talking about, and you can go back and watch the video if you're interested in learning more on it, it's not a whole lot of money. So I've seen incentives work. You know, for me in early sobriety, I was not in a position to where I necessarily needed direct incentives, but my whole sober journey started with an incentive. My mother, God bless her, God rest her soul, who was many decades sober at the time when I finally got sober, I didn't have a place to live. Now, I had, family and people that would take me in, but they were not interested in having me in. I had been sleeping in my car and on friends' couches for about a week or so before I finally came around to this. And my mom used an incentive to get me going. She said, I will help you. I will help you to get and stay sober, but you are going to have to take some action, right? Next right thing stuff. You're going to have to start taking some action. And so she laid that incentive in front of me. The first thing was I had to go and I had to get an assessment with the place that I ended up going to rehab at. But she set up that incentive for me. Now, like I said, I didn't have the need for incentives like, getting to use a gym for free or needing the public, the city to provide me housing. But I learned early on that I would have to create incentives for myself. I knew that had worked, what my mom did. And more than anything, I was very fortunate, and I consider this a God thing. God intervened in my life. My conception of a higher power intervened in my life early on and really taught me that taking that action, filling my day, taking the next step in front of me, doing the next right thing was going to be pivotal to me staying focused, keeping my head out of drugs and alcohol, and making myself, quite frankly, exhausted at the end of every day so I could really focus on one day at a time, 1 hour at a time if I had to. And so I started to create incentives for myself, and many of those have lasted to this very day. Now, from the outside looking in, I always get in these conversations with people that I work with about, oh, you never cut loose, you never let yourself have enough fun, you eat right too much, you don't go out and socialize enough, you work out too much, you do all these things that are, when you add up all the stuff that I fill my day with, a lot of it doesn't sound too fun. But the thing is for me is, yes, number one, most importantly, it keeps me sober. But as I have told you before, it keeps me centered. It keeps me focused when I have goals that I've put in front of myself. And here's the whole deal. As I have added up these incentives, and we're going to go through some of them, throughout my nearly 10 years of sobriety, like I was talking about with the exercise thing, my goals not only start to get more, and they're nothing crazy, but I also, when you live with these incentives and live with building your life in a way that is so full and where you're doing something productive all the time, and granted, my productive things I think are kind of really small things, but it's a bunch of really small things that add up for me to a whole day and then a whole week and a month, and all of a sudden I'm looking at 10 years of sobriety. Now, incentives early on in sobriety are great. Going to dinners with friends to celebrate incremental successes in sobriety, like a month sober, 6 months sober, a year sober, and I did all those things early on in my sobriety. I need to celebrate them more, to be honest with you. But like I said, I've raised the bar for myself. So some of the things that I do is, yes, I exercise and I eat generally very healthily throughout the week. My rule is Sunday, and I always start on Sunday so I can get a good thing going for the week. I do fall short of that sometimes, and I always regret it. So I love on Sundays, not just with my eating and exercise. I always eat, I always exercise, but I go to the office too, and I work a little bit, and it's low stress. It's just a couple hours, but I start getting myself really prepared for the week that's going to come. With food, I use meal prep services. Not everyone can afford those. But before I could afford to use the meal prep services every week, I would make all my food on Sunday. So I would make my clean meals every Sunday. That takes a lot of time, but if you don't have the money for the meal prep services, you can go that route. And so what I do is, and I trust me, this is agonizing. I think I've posted, I created the line a couple months ago on my Instagram. It's about Wednesday. Every week I start fantasizing about murdering my diet in my sleep because it can get crazy making sometimes. And yes, I do fall short, and I have cheat meals on Wednesdays and Thursdays every once in a while. But when that happens, I always regret it. And because I have been eating clean for so long, I feel bad physically, and that helps me not do it again the next week. But the point is that I do all that and I stay focused so that Fridays and Saturdays, the weekend, I can enjoy myself. You know, a lot of times I do work out, but I'm not thinking that I absolutely have to on Friday and Saturday because I've had such a good run Sunday through Thursday. And I can really relax and enjoy myself and know that I had this really full week where I exercised right. I got in tune with my body. I got in focus with my body. I filled my body with as healthy things as possible. And another incentive I've kind of created for myself is I've been very frugal with my money ever since I got sober. I still kind of live below my means, but I lived below my means. I mean, I knew I was at kind of the poverty line my first couple years sober, but because I lived so far below it, and there are ways to do this. It's hard to do it, but I promise you there are ways to do it. A lot of it has to do with networking, and I've been very fortunate. I've been given so many gifts through sobriety, but I found a way to live pretty cheaply in a pretty nice house early on in sobriety because of people I met through recovery. And there's all sorts of these things. It's not like everyone's just walking up to you willing to hand you something. But like I said, if you keep your eyes and ears open and you continue to do the next right thing, you will find that opportunities come to you. And that's one of the things that came to me and allowed me really early on to start saving my money. And I still am really good with my money today. This is not something I was ever good at before I got sober, okay? This was not a skill I had. My parents didn't teach me how to take care of money. I didn't learn how to take care of money. I, in fact, did even worse in college and right out of college, and especially in my active addiction to heroin. I was terrible with money, most of it going to the drug, of course, but I've been able to learn to do this, and the reason I'm focusing on this one is because I'm not that smart, okay? And I've just heard from enough people throughout my life on if you can find a way to live below your means, how beneficial it is in the long run. And the reason I bring this up is because I've saved my money for a long time now. Now, whenever I want to, whenever I say, hey, you know what? I need a new TV. I want a new TV. I can just go get a new TV. I don't have to wait for a bonus check or a holiday or a big gift, and I certainly don't have to, put it on credit and pay it off because I have been fortunate. I'm not saying it's all because of me. I have been blessed, absolutely. But because after 10 years, the savings start to mount up and I can make decisions like that. Clothing. I'm not the most fashion forward person, but I think I, look pretty good on camera. I take pride in it, but I mainly buy my clothes from off-rack places, like Saks Off Fifth or Nordstrom Rack, and you can save a ton of money doing it that way. But because I'm always doing it that way, and I don't have crazy shopping sprees or anything like that, you know what? When I want a nice pair of shoes that I fall in love with, I can get them, and I don't feel bad about it. And you know what? When I've done that long enough, when I screw up and maybe I buy something that I didn't need to, I feel bad about it, and I don't make that mistake again, and it doesn't happen very often. Cars. I've waited as long as possible to buy new cars because I know what a expense it can be, a monthly expense it can be. Again, I have been lucky, I've been fortunate, but being frugal has really created that incentive of I'm not going to, go spend my money on things that I don't need. I find that I ask myself every time I swipe my card or pay cash somewhere, do I need this? What is the purpose of this? And again, this is not something that I was taught growing up. This is not something I was good at. This is something I've learned from just trying these positive ways of life that I have learned by osmosis through recovery. And these incentives that I've created for myself over almost 10 years, I got to tell you, the greatest thing about it is that when you do things like this long enough, it starts to become second nature. And I start to challenge myself, and I'm always asking myself, because God knows I'm a flawed human being. And almost every day of the week I'm going, man, I wish I could go have Whataburger today. I think I'm going to have pizza today. Man, I don't need to work out today. I'm exhausted. But because I've done it what I think is the right way for so long, I've built in for myself a conscience, the little angel on the wing. For so long in my life, the devil got all the airtime, okay? But I have been working the muscles of the little angel on the other side of the shoulder so long now that this conscience didn't exist for even before I used and into my using is so strong now. And so this voice in my head will always go, no, you can't do that. No, do you really want to do that? No. Are you really? You can't go work out today? Really? You can't eat right today? I bet you can. It's an amazing thing. Again, spiritual thing, God thing, higher power thing, not by my own doing, except to say that I feel like through the grace of God and the help of others, I have worked these muscles over time. They've been very, very beneficial to me. And the point is that after doing it so long, built up this muscle, I continue to challenge myself. It makes it easier to do those laborious things, to read every night, to meditate, to journal, to stack all these things throughout my day. I can't tell you how happy it makes me when I look up and I go, man, I I agonize sometimes over how non-existent my social life is, but then when I start to think about all the things I've accomplished, I feel really great about it. I'm not going to lie to you. I feel really great that I look up in a week and I read every single night, this history book that 10 years ago, there's no chance I would read history. I mean, it's practically a textbook, but I'm just challenging myself. So the point is after a long period of time, sobriety, after, making little incentives for myself, started out early, just like making my bed every single morning. That was a great tip I got early on in sobriety. It's like, just make your bed every single morning. I was so scared that if I didn't make my bed, I was going to relapse, that I made my bed every single morning. And that has led to all this stuff building up, this muscle getting stronger, and to me feeling a lot better about my life. And again, raising the bar on a lot of these things and adding new things in that, it's kind of hard to fail, to be honest with you. Again, very fortunate, very lucky, very blessed. But all it took for me was to create some challenges for myself. And yeah, in all of this, remaining sober. But I got to tell you, doing all these things, exercise, eating right, the reading, the not spending money, it all has helped center me to help me stay sober. Okay, let's get the mail. Mail today is coming from YouTube, Collagen Babe, commenting on a comment I made on one of the videos about losing my mom. And Collagen Babe says, I cried for 3 years after my mom died in 2015. Still feel her in my soul. Her birthday was September 23rd. I burned her new set of clothes in a fire offering. We are Chinese. We believe in the spiritual realm. Fantastic feedback, fantastic mail, Collagen Babe. I really appreciate you sharing that. It was, of course, a very trying time losing my mom. If you don't know, and there's plenty of videos where I talk about it, including one where I talk about the whole subject of losing my mom and what toll that took on my sobriety. My mom was sick pretty much my entire life, so I had been facing this possibility for a long time. I'm much happier that it happened that way as opposed to tragedy come out of nowhere way. But even said with that, the last couple years were really hard because it just got progressively worse. And, the crying thing is like and I commend you for sharing that. And I've talked to so many, especially women, I'll say. I know the bond between daughters and mothers, as I've seen with my own sister, is something really unique and special, and it's been different for me at least. I haven't had a thing where I'm just, so upset that I can't move for the couple years it's been since my mom passed. But I will say I will start crying at the most random times. It's gotten a little bit better this year. It doesn't happen as much, but for the first 18 months probably, just anything, the littlest thing in the world. I've talked about it on here before, I think. A movie trailer, a song. It can be something that had nothing to do with me and my mom's relationship. And I would just burst into tears. And to speak about the crying thing, my mom passed away in hospice. It was her choice to go off her medication and her help and to pass on her own. And being in that hospice room with my mom, not passed yet, but pretty much gone, I would hope no one has to go through that. To see your parent physically pass away like that is really dramatic. It's you can see it, you can smell it, you can feel it in the air. However, I was surrounded by not just people who love me and love my mom, but surrounded by people who had been in my life my entire life. I mean, we had like 10 people crowded in this room, just all staying there throughout the day and throughout the night. And we were basically all crying for just all hours on end. And I didn't think once about, my significant other was there with me. I didn't think once about, I don't want, my girlfriend to see me crying or to see me weak, or I want to be strong for my sister. We just all just let it out. And it was a very cathartic experience. It was something that I really needed. And I don't have the thing of, I didn't have just absolute misery, like can't get out of bed in dealing with my mom's passing after it happened. But, as far as feeling her spirit with you, as you still feel her in your soul, that's something that I've experienced as well. It's so funny, me and my mom had a complicated relationship. She had an interesting way of showing love sometimes. And the way my mom and my sister were, they would just brush it off. They would have these awful knockdown, drag-out fights with each other, and then they would just be, 5 minutes later, it was like it never happened. I wasn't quite like that. I couldn't just like turn on a dime like that. But what I will say is after my mom passed, I would try. I couldn't think of one of those things that had driven me crazy or made me upset or felt like a bog down in me and my mom's relationship. I couldn't think of one of them. I could only think of the love. I was just surrounded by love, and I really do feel her. It's an incredible thing. I've been pretty, since being sober, I think I've been a spiritual person. My mom's passing has made me, you want to see God in action. For me, losing my parent and being lifted up by those around her and around me just left an incredible spiritual impact that I still feel today. And as far as your traditions from being Chinese, I think that's fantastic. If you can't count on your traditions in a time like this, when can you? And I think, of course, we should count on traditions. We should count on traditions of origin, traditions of family, traditions of religion. I think we don't have enough of them in the world right now, and I'd really like to see us get back to that. And so I commend you, Collagen Babe, for commenting, for doing those things, and thank you so much for sharing with us. If you would like to be part of the mail, you can, of course, leave a comment on this video right here or any of the videos. I get updates when we get comments, so I flag all of those. You can also, of course, comment on any of my social media feeds. They're listed right here. You can send me a DM. Got a great DM this week. If you'd like to stay private, you can do that. I'll ask before sharing anything. Anything that's posted on the public shares, those are, of course, fair game. But that's all we got for this time. We'll see you next time. Hey family, if you like what we're doing here and you want to see more, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Share it with someone who you think might benefit from watching this, and feel free to comment below. Love.